Question number 57 is solving incomplete quadratic equations. Incomplete quadratic equations. That is b equals 0, c equals 0, or both b and c equals 0. We can't have a equals 0 because then it's not a quadratic equation. Suppose c is 0. That is, say you have x squared plus 9x is equal to 0. C is 0. The constant is 0. There's an understood plus 0. That is, a is 1, b is 9, c is 0. Now there are two ways of handling a problem like this. One way is to factor out the x. X times x is x squared plus x times 9 is 9x. And this is 0. So either that factor is 0 or that factor is 0. Or we're done solving that one. It already tells me what x is. Bring the 9 over to the other side, you get x is negative 9. So there is the answer. X is 0 or x is negative 9. Now, if you want to, you can factor it the old-fashioned way. Just understand that there's a 0 there. Since it's an understood 1x squared, we put x here and x here. And we want two numbers. We want the two numbers to multiply out to 0. That should tell you one of them is 0. And add up to 9. Two numbers that multiply out to 0 and add up to 9 will be 0 and 9. Well, if this is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0. Means x is 0. If this is 0, that means x is negative 9. The same two answers that we got a moment ago. That's this way here. It's a strange way of doing it, but it works like a charm. That's how you should handle it if c is 0. So the product of the two numbers will be 0. That means one of the numbers is 0. And whatever you want the sum to be, let the other number be that number. Let it be the sum. Here, you have x squared minus 9. This is when b is 0. Now there are two ways of doing this. You can think of it as x squared plus 0x minus 9 equals 0. So since it's x squared, I'm going to try to factor it this way. I want two numbers that multiply out to negative 9 that add up to 0. And those two numbers are positive 3 and negative 3. 0. Just for the record, this here is the difference of squares. Here you can think of it as x being squared, and over here you can think of it as 3 being squared. That's why I have x and 3 in both of the brackets. One with a plus, one with a minus. So you could have factored it from the top and realizing it as the difference of squares, or you can insert the b, the missing term. That's why we call it incomplete. There was no x term. You could insert the x term and then play the game like always. Since it's understood to be 1x squared, you want two numbers that multiply out to 9 that add up to negative 9 that add up to 0. Positive 3, negative 3. If this is 0, it's because x is negative 3. If that's 0, it's because x is 3. And there's your answers. Now, if you had x squared plus 9 equals 0, that is x squared plus 0x plus 9 equals 0. Well, you can go and try to factor it. find two numbers that multiply out to positive 9. That means the numbers have to either both be positive or both be negative. Now if you add two positives, it'll never be 0. If you add two negatives, it'll never be 0. The sum will never be 0. This here has no solution. It's the sum of squares. It never equals 0. If you think about it, if x can be either a negative number, 0, or a positive number. If you square a negative, you get a positive. If you square 0, you get 0. If you square a positive, you get positive. That is, x squared is either equal to 0 or is bigger than 0. You're either 0 or positive. You're never negative. X squared is 0 on up. Well, if you add 9, then x squared plus 9 will either be 9 or above. This is 9 or above. So how can you ask me to tell you what x will make it 0? X squared plus 9 will never be 0. It'll be 9 or 10. It'll also be 9.8 or 57.3 or the square root of 85, which is more than 9. It'll be 37 over 4. As long as it's 9 or above, you can solve x squared plus 9 equal, and you can write any number 9 or above, like 11. That will have an answer. Why? Because if you have x squared plus 9 equaling some number, if you take away 9 from both sides, then x squared must be that number minus 9. But it has to be 0 or more. Nothing squared will ever equal to a negative number. You can't square a negative and get a negative because you get a positive. You can't square 0 and get a negative because you get 0. You can't square a positive number and get a negative because you'll get a positive. That is, this must be at least 0. If you add 9 to both sides, that box must be at least 9. What goes in here must be 9 or above. It can't be 0. The sum of squares equaling 0 is no solution. Okay, you can't factor that. So with x squared minus 9, you could. You have x squared minus 5 is equal to 0. That means the x term is missing. B is 0. Well, there are two ways of doing this. You can bring the 5 over to the other side. Things, a lot of people get sloppy here. They go, oh, especially say if it were 25 instead of 5. A lot of you say, oh, first grade, 5. Wrong. Second grade. It can't be first grade level because you got it wrong. Plus or minus 5. If the power is 2, there might be up to 2 answers. There might be no answers, 1 answer, or 2 answers. If that power was 17, there might be 17 answers, or 16 answers, or 15 answers, down to 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answer. Okay, there might be as many as 17 different answers. Whatever the highest power is, there might be that many answers. Okay, but that's not enough. You can't say, oh yeah, I know that. Highest power is 2, there might be 2 answers. Fine, look for them. If the highest power is whatever, look for that number of answers. In this case, look for 2 answers. Can I square a negative and get 25? Sure. A negative squared is positive, and the number should be 5. Negative 5. X is equal to plus or minus. What do you square to get 5? Plus or minus the square root of 5. If x squared is k, if x squared is k, and k is not negative, it's bigger, it equals 0 or it's bigger. If that, then x is equal to plus minus square root of k. You must know this like you know your name. That way, if I tell you x squared is 7, you say, well, that's positive. Say x is plus or minus square root of 7. If x squared is 13, very simple, x is plus minus the square root of that number. If x squared is 11.31, not a big deal, x is plus minus the square root of that number. You need to know this like you know your name. If you misspell your name wrong, actually you need to know it better than your name. If you misspell your name on the test, you probably won't lose a point. But if you don't know this rule, you'll lose points. So, with respect to your test, it's better that you know if x squared is equal to k, then x is plus or minus the square root of k. Better than you know how to spell your name. And on that note, that finishes section 57.